to recognize we have a new member of the house band, our young, good-looking guitar player, Saeed. Welcome, welcome. We'll have a full orchestra back there before you're finished. Okay, we have to stop when there's more people back there than there are out here. Okay. So a consciousness of love. It's probably the basic idea of this whole teaching, the science of mind, is how to express ourselves as love. Not just with love, or not, and I'm not talking about love, the emotion of falling in love with someone or loving, your relatives, or loving your pets, or loving your brand new car. I'm talking about love as the basic energy of life. That everything that we express from is love. Ken Kais said, all human behavior is the expression of love. Now, when you hear that, you might say, oh, really? And then he went on to add, some of it is skillful and some of it is unskillful. And the unskillful part is the part that comes from a heart that is filled with fear. And fear is simply the absence of the recognition of love. It's not really real. It's sort of like darkness isn't really real. You turn on the light and the light's there. There's nothing to stop it. The darkness doesn't have any substance. So the same it is with fear. As a basic idea, it's something that we come to believe in or accept. And actually, it's part of our evolutionary heritage. It's part of living in the field of the physical universe in which what they call duality exists. And duality is simply not two real things. It's a continuum of the real thing and the absence of it. Now, fear has served us in our evolutionary journey. It still serves us. It's smart to be afraid of that which you don't know or don't understand, at least to the point of becoming aware that, hey, there's something here, I'm in a new space, I don't understand what's happening, and to kind of go on alert. But the kind of fear that comes from false beliefs and false ideas and clinging to ideas that don't serve us, that fear is debilitating. That fear is destructive. That fear leads us to live constrained lives and not express our potential. Eric Butterworth, the great unity minister, said there is only one sin in New Thought, and that sin is the frustration of potential. And how do we frustrate our potential? We frustrate our potential by thinking fearful thoughts, by thinking too small, you might say. By projecting our fear onto others and making them the enemy. And then once you do that, you have to have a story about why they're the enemy. And that story has to be somewhat dramatic to justify the intensity of the feelings of fear. And we create and project this whole story about the way things are that's all just made up. And it began a long time ago when one tribe on this side of the hill was concerned about the tribe on the other side of the hill. They were other. And every now and then they might come over the hill and take their stuff or whatever. So they made up a story about why you should stay in this tribe on this side of the hill. See, because otherwise all the people would say, hey, that other tribe's better than this. I'm going to go over the hill and join them. So the leaders sitting around the campfire would talk about, we are the chosen people, or some such story. And even though you may suffer being here, you should stay here because everyone else is our enemy. And so it began. And look where we are today. Fenwick Holmes' earnest brother, and I took this out of a much longer quote, wrote this: every word we speak is a creative word, but it is the feeling that it expresses and which accompanies it that creates. It's the feeling that creates. The deepest feeling produces the highest creation. A word spoken in love produces harmony in body and ease in conditions. A word spoken in hate throws poison into the blood and produces physical discord for the hater. And I think we get that. I think we know that. At least we know it. We may not get it. We may not get it in the sense that we really practice and recognize that when we do have these fear-based thoughts that often are masqueraded as justifiable anger or righteous indignation. See, it's hard to be indignant if you don't feel righteous about it. But that lets us justify the feeling, and then there's that release of energy, and it feels good. But what we know scientifically that when you think fear-based negative thoughts, a different set of chemicals is released into your system than when you think positive, uplifting thoughts. And the chemicals that are released in fear-based thinking are corrosive to the physical system. And that the peptides that are released, which are little molecules that have certain shapes, and your organs and the cells in your organs have different receptacles for those peptides, and when those peptides get there and plug in, that cell is charged with that particular set of characteristics. And fear-based peptides are different than what you might call loving or empowered peptides. So when you go through the week complaining, feeling bitter, feeling upset, being angry, being against, you wonder why you're exhausted. Because you're physically depleting your body. We know that. The other aspect of love that we get from the Eastern philosophers more than the West is that true love has no agenda. See, as human beings, we often you ever have an agenda about something where you're trying to be nice to someone so they'll do something for you, maybe? Anybody ever been on a first date? Where there's that kind of, I'm going to be extra nice so that I will receive something, so that the person will behave in a certain way. Maybe so they'll stop beating me. But that's love with an agenda. And that's a different set of energy too. It's not the full-blown love energy that's released in your system. It's more of a fear-based, I have to behave a certain way in order to get what I want or otherwise I won't get it kind of an energy. My teacher, Bill Tolliver, used to say that his favorite definition of love, and I don't know where he got it from, was to hold harmless and wish well. He said when you think about not necessarily the primary people in your life, because you want more for them, but when you think about everyone else on the planet, if I can hold them harmless and wish them well, then I am free. But what if they're rotten sons of bitches? What if they done me wrong, or they're doing other people wrong, or they're dangerous? Doesn't mean you don't protect yourself. It means in your consciousness, you hold them harmless and wish them well. Because the alternative to that is to be thinking about how they're going to harm you and what's wrong with them, and you build up that story and you build up that energy, and we empower and fund our inner Department of Defense. Now, your inner Department of Defense is that part of you that deals with the fears in your life, and it builds forts and embankments, and it sends out reconnaissance missions to kind of spy on what's going on in the world, and it reinforces itself continually to try to protect you from the outer world and close you off as much as possible so you'll be safe. How much energy goes into protecting your egoic needs in your life? And I'll give you an example of what that looks like. That's when you do something you wouldn't ordinarily do because someone else will think of you a certain way if you do it. Somebody asked me today, I put out the thing on Facebook that you could wear, the shorts day. Like I have to tell you, you can wear shorts, but you wear shorts. And somebody, where's your shorts? Well, I said, I'm going down to see Dr. Moira Fox today at Redondo Beach for our Ireland meeting. You don't wear shorts to Dr. Moira's office. But that's not really why I didn't do it. I did it to respect her. But see, what is my motivation? It's not that you don't, it's not that, see, some people say, well, just do whatever you want and treat people like crap. No. How about honor and respect people? But don't do it because, behave a certain way because you're afraid they won't approve of you. Maybe honor and respect them because they deserve honor and respect. It's kind of an interesting idea. Carl Jung said, where love rules, there is no will to power. And where power predominates, there love is lacking. The one is the shadow of the other. Now, he's not talking about the idea of expression of legitimate inner power, your authority. He's talking about will to power, people that want to be in charge because they're afraid that if they aren't, they will be harmed. You know, the Greeks had an idea back in Grecian times, they had an idea that anyone that sought a political office was questionable. That the true leader would be reluctant to be the leader, but the demands of the populace would say to them, please be our leader. And they would reluctantly step forward. That was considered a form of excellence. Okay, our system isn't quite like that, you may have noticed. We have people that step forward, sometimes maybe a little bit out of an egoic need. I don't know, maybe you've noticed. What is the motivation? You know, and then the voting, the system we have, and which is simply a result of the people in it, make their lives as miserable as possible up till election day. Try to ask tough questions and catch them off balance, and, you know, especially if it's the one you don't like. Why? Because you're afraid the wrong person might get elected. But what if they're all the wrong person up on the stage? You see, and then we, once the election's over, we begin to complain until the next cycle. We're not holding harmless and wishing well, are we? We're doing quite the opposite. Matter of fact, if the other side gets in, we try to make sure they can't govern, and we call ourselves patriots. Right or the left, same thing. So we have pretty much for the last few decades in this country ensured that nothing much gets done, except what we don't want. Now, we wouldn't say we intentionally did that, would we? But we also wouldn't say, I don't think you can say there's a whole lot of love in our political process. And you can blame the process, but who is the process? We are. But it's not me, it's those other folks, right? I mean, I'm okay, you're okay, right? We agree, you and me are okay, but everybody else is screwed up. And there's nothing we can do about it, they're so screwed up. There's nothing we can do about it but join in the cacophony of noise and dysfunction. Because we're not in a loving space, we contribute to the dysfunction. Matter of fact, we accelerate it. But what are we supposed to do? You know, what are we supposed to do? Marianne Williamson has done a lot of work in the political realm in terms of looking at what would it look like to have a politics based on love. And the beginning of it is to insist that it's even a possibility. And to refuse to play at any other level. And at first you feel like the lonely voice, but after a while maybe something begins to change. John Lennon said, we need to learn to love ourselves first in all our glory and our imperfections. If we cannot love ourselves, we cannot fully open to our ability to love others or our potential to create. Evolution and all hopes for a better world rest in the fearlessness and open-hearted vision of people who embrace life. Now, where'd thinking like that get him? He got shot. Yeah, it's dangerous to stand up and declare for love in this culture. It's threatening. Why is it threatening? Why is it threatening to people when you stand up and declare for love? It's because they know that's what they should be doing, but they know they're not because they're afraid. The most dangerous thing you can do on this planet is remind someone else that they're not living up to their own potential in a very clear way. A consciousness of love isn't something you can just have when it's convenient. And it isn't something, it seems, that the culture around you will create for you and encourage you to live in. You may have had some elements of that growing up with some people, but probably not the whole culture around you. It's more like every person for themselves, and you got to be careful and always be on guard. And, you know, what if advertisers could only appeal to your loving nature? How many ads do you see a day telling you to be what? Be on guard, be aware, you might be using the wrong product. And you go, oh my God, I think they're right. Let me get on Amazon.com and order a bunch of stuff. Yeah, on Facebook, it's interesting. I enjoy, many of you know I enjoy Facebook, and it's kind of interesting to watch the alarm get sounded, you know, about something. 12 foods you should never eat. You know, that assumes that you and I are exactly, A, it assumes that you're right about that for yourself, and B, it assumes that you and I have the same internal metabolism and all that, and C, it assumes that I care. And bananas was on the list. I like bananas. But, you know, it's like that consciousness, you know, that sort of begins to develop an hysteria that we've seen throughout our history to horrible effect. We're afraid of our food. Am I eating the right thing? Am I eating it correctly? Am I chewing enough times? What if a GMO snuck in here? And maybe there is legitimate concern for that, even though the science really pretty much says there isn't, but, you know, maybe there is. So maybe I better be afraid first and get ahead of the pack. And maybe the evidence will show up later. But see, the problem is when I become afraid first, I won't listen to the evidence. What do you think global warming denial is but fear in advance? Because what if it's true? It's too horrible to contemplate, so it can't be true. So any evidence that says it is true must be denied. It's a very simple psychological process. You know, some people have trouble believing that evolution is true, that they descended from monkeys. I think monkeys would be more embarrassed to find out they descended from us. But see, the fear comes out first, and once the fear is there, the evidence is automatically refuted. That's what we do. That's what we do, you see. See, what Ernest Holmes understood was that we are each that unique blueprint. And he said what this teaching is to do is to awaken your own inner intelligence, because only you know how to fully express your life. But you do know. And as confusing as it may seem at times, if you pay attention, you always know whether you're on track or not. You feel it. It feels right or it doesn't. It resonates or it doesn't. So with that in mind, I have a job opportunity here. It's a fantastic higher self-employment opportunity. Okay, and here's what's needed. Sincere human beings to give their gifts and be lights in this world. Experience not required, just willingness. Come as you are, must be willing to give and receive love, voice your vision, stand for truth, release your fears, forgive mistakes, own your shadow, be the light, trust the universe, and enjoy mystery, paradox, and change. Oh, and must be willing to consider that you are mistaken about not being good enough. Now, if that ad appeared in the paper, would you feel inclined to apply? See? But that's what we are. That's what we're here to do. And we're waiting for someone outside of us to encourage us, and they're just not going to. I can only encourage you from the limited standpoint of the knowledge I have. And most of the rest of the world is operating out of such a blanket of fear that they can only encourage you not to be a threat to them. It's the best they can do. It has to come from within. We have to awaken to the truth that is already so. You don't need to be saved. You're already saved. You were saved when you showed up. But you need to awaken to and accept what has always been so. That there is something within you that is so powerful that it will absolutely lead you to the life of your dreams and the life you can't even imagine. And I'm not exaggerating, because you're dealing with an infinite possibility. And I know, first time I heard something like that, I sat there and thought, don't tell me after all the crap I've been through that it was unnecessary. And that's a way to go, you know. Well, I've suffered up to this point, I might as well keep suffering or I'll look inconsistent. That's an option. It's an option to stay limited because it's too hard to look at the fact that you didn't need to be limited this long. But I think a better option is to say, you know what? Every one of those experiences of limitation got me here to be ready. And I wouldn't be hearing this message if I wasn't ready to hear it. If I wasn't ready to act on it. And whatever that looks like for you, whatever you need to stop watching or stop doing or start doing or expand on or whatever it is, and it'll be different for everyone in here. Don't let the world feed you anything less than your own magnificence. Anything that's leading you away from a loving consciousness needs to be out of your life. Very simple. Beginning with your own self-talk. That's the first place. So a consciousness of love says this: I can look at the suffering of humanity, and I can see within it, as a reactionary mechanism, that there is perfection underneath that. That every individual involved, no matter what their behavior seems like, no matter how cruel or stupid or harmful, they are a divine spark of life within. No exceptions. God didn't make any junk. It's either true or it isn't. And if it's true for any of us, it's true for all of us. And am I any different than the people committing atrocities if I'm not getting my own life in alignment? Maybe just a matter of degree. Am I making the planet better or not? Am I offering up my best self or not? Am I willing to live a life that brings joy to myself and inspiration to others or not? That's the choice for today. Thank you, and namaste.